Maya Chun had never known what it meant to feel wanted. At 26 years old, she worked 3 jobs just to keep a small roof over her head in the cramped apartment she rented on the outskirts of the city. Every morning, she woke up at 4 in the morning to clean offices in the downtown business district. By 9, she was rushing to her second job at a small bakery where she kneaded dough and served customers until 3 in the afternoon. And then, 3 nights a week, she worked as a waitress at a local diner until midnight. Her hands were always rough, her back always aching, and her eyes always tired. But Maya never complained. She had learned long ago that complaining changed nothing. She had grown up in the foster care system, bounced from home to home like an unwanted package that nobody wanted to keep. Some families were kind enough, but they never kept her for long. Others were cruel in ways that still haunted her dreams. By the time she turned 18, she had lived in 14 different homes and attended 11 different schools. She had no family photos, no childhood memories worth cherishing, and no idea who her real parents were. The only thing she knew was that her mother had abandoned her at a fire station when she was just 3 days old. There was no note, no explanation, and no name left behind. Just a baby wrapped in a thin blanket with a small birthmark shaped like a crescent moon on her left shoulder. Maya had stopped wondering about her mother years ago. She had stopped asking why she was abandoned, why she was not worth keeping, why she was destined to be alone. Those questions only brought pain, and pain was something Maya had learned to push deep down inside her heart where it could not touch her daily life. She focused on surviving, on working, on saving every penny she could so that one day, maybe one day, she could afford something better than survival. Her apartment was barely big enough for a bed and a small kitchen. The walls were thin, and she could hear her neighbors arguing every night. The heating barely worked in winter, and the air conditioning was completely broken in summer. But it was hers, paid for with her own hard work, and that meant something to Maya. It meant she did not owe anyone anything. It meant she was not dependent on the kindness of strangers who could take everything away at any moment. On the morning that would change her life forever, Maya woke up to the sound of rain hitting her window. It was a Thursday in late October, and the sky was the color of wet concrete. She had overslept by 10 minutes, which meant she would have to skip breakfast to make it to her cleaning job on time. She threw on her work clothes, grabbed her bag, and rushed out the door without even looking in the mirror. There was no point in looking. She knew what she would see. Dark circles under her eyes, pale skin from too little sleep and too much work, and hair that needed washing but would have to wait until she got home tonight. The bus was crowded as always, filled with other workers heading to their early morning shifts. Maya stood near the back, holding onto a pole and staring out the window at the gray city passing by. She thought about the bills she needed to pay next week, the rent that was due in 5 days, and the fact that her shoes had a hole in them that let water in when it rained. She needed new shoes, but new shoes cost money, and money was something she never had enough of. When she arrived at the office building, she clocked in and began her routine, vacuuming carpets, emptying trash cans, wiping down desks, cleaning bathrooms. She moved through the building like a ghost, invisible to the few early workers who were already at their computers. They never looked at her, never acknowledged her existence, and Maya preferred it that way. She did not want their attention. She just wanted to do her job and get paid. It was around 7:30 in the morning when something unusual happened. Maya was cleaning the executive floor, which she rarely had access to because it was usually handled by a senior cleaner. But today the senior cleaner had called in sick, and Maya had been asked to cover for her. She had never been to the executive floor before, and she was struck by how different it was from the rest of the building. The carpets were softer, the furniture was more expensive, and the windows offered a stunning view of the city skyline. She was emptying a trash can in one of the corner offices when she noticed a woman standing by the window. The woman was tall and elegant, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit. Her hair was silver, pulled back into a neat bun, and her posture was rigid, almost military. She seemed to be staring at something outside, but Maya could not tell what. The rain was still falling, and the sky was nothing but gray. Maya tried to move quietly, not wanting to disturb the woman. But her foot caught on the edge of the carpet, and she stumbled, nearly dropping the trash bag she was holding. The noise was small, but it was enough to make the woman turn around. For a moment, neither of them moved. The woman stared at Maya with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. Her eyes were a striking shade of gray, almost silver, and they seemed to be searching for something in Maya's face. Maya felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. She mumbled an apology and tried to leave, but the woman's voice stopped her. The woman asked Maya to wait. Her voice was calm but commanding, the kind of voice that expected to be obeyed. Maya froze, unsure of what to do. She was just a cleaner. She had no business being in this office, talking to someone who was clearly important. But the woman did not seem angry. If anything, she seemed curious, almost hopeful. The woman asked Maya her name. Maya told her. The woman nodded slowly, as if the answer confirmed something she already suspected. Then, she asked Maya another question, one that made no sense at all. She asked if Maya had a birthmark on her left shoulder, shaped like a crescent moon. Maya's blood ran cold. How could this woman possibly know about her birthmark? She had never shown it to anyone. It was hidden under her clothes, a private part of herself that she rarely even thought about. She did not answer the question, but her silence was answer enough. The woman's eyes filled with tears, and, for the first time, her rigid composure cracked. The woman said that she had been looking for Maya for a very long time. She said that she was sorry, so deeply sorry, for everything. She said that she was Maya's mother. Maya did not believe her. She could not believe her. This had to be some kind of cruel joke, some kind of mistake. Her mother had abandoned her at a fire station 26 years ago. Her mother had never come looking for her, never tried to find her, never cared whether she lived or died. And now this stranger, this wealthy woman in her expensive suit, was claiming to be that same mother? It was impossible. It was ridiculous. It was painful in a way that Maya could not describe. She told the woman that she had to go. She turned and walked toward the door, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. But the woman called out to her again, begging her to stop, to listen, to give her a chance to explain. Maya did not want to listen. She did not want to hear excuses or explanations. She had spent her entire life wondering why she was not good enough to be kept. And she was not about to let this woman give her some polished answer that would only hurt more. But something made her stop. Maybe it was the desperation in the woman's voice. Maybe it was the tears streaming down her face. Maybe it was the small, fragile part of Maya that still wanted to believe that somewhere out there, someone had wanted her. Whatever it was, it made her turn around and face the woman who claimed to be her mother. The woman introduced herself as Eleanor Zhao. She said that she was the founder and CEO of Zhao Industries, one of the largest technology conglomerates in the world. She said that she had built her empire from nothing, starting with a small electronics shop and growing it into a global powerhouse worth over $1 trillion. She said that she had sacrificed everything for her success, including the most precious thing in her life, her daughter, Maya. Maya listened in stunned silence as Eleanor told her story. She explained that 26 years ago, she had been young, poor, and desperate. She had come to this country as an immigrant with nothing but $100 in her pocket and a dream of making something of herself. She had worked 3 jobs just like Maya, saving every penny and dreaming of a better future. And then she had gotten pregnant. The father was a man who had promised to marry her but abandoned her when he found out about the baby. Eleanor was alone, scared, and barely able to take care of herself, let alone a child. She had tried to keep Maya, she really had. But the bills kept piling up, the landlord kept threatening to evict her, and she could not afford food for herself, let alone formula and diapers for a baby. She made the hardest decision of her life. She left Maya at a fire station, hoping that someone would find her and give her a better life than Eleanor could provide. Eleanor said that she had regretted that decision every single day since. She said that she had tried to find Maya many times over the years, but the foster care system was a maze of bureaucracy and dead ends. She had hired private investigators, lawyers, and experts, but Maya seemed to have vanished into the system. It was only recently, after years of searching, that she had finally found a lead. A cleaner at her own company, a young woman named Maya Chan, who had a birthmark shaped like a crescent moon on her left shoulder. Maya did not know what to feel. Anger, certainly. How dare this woman abandon her and then come back 26 years later expecting forgiveness. Sadness, too. For all the years she had spent wondering, all the nights she had cried herself to sleep in foster homes, all the times she had felt worthless and unwanted. But there was something else mixed in with the anger and sadness. Something that felt dangerously like hope. Eleanor told Maya that she was dying. She had been diagnosed with a rare and aggressive form of cancer 6 months ago, and the doctors had given her less than a year to live. That was why she had intensified her search for Maya. She did not want to die without seeing her daughter one last time, without apologizing for what she had done, without trying to make things right. Maya felt her legs go weak. She reached for a chair and sat down heavily, trying to process everything she had just heard. Her mother was a trillionaire. Her mother was dying. Her mother had been looking for her. Her mother was sorry. Eleanor asked Maya if she would give her a chance. Not to forgive her, not yet, maybe never. But just to get to know her, to spend whatever time they had left together, to let Eleanor try to make up for some of the pain she had caused. She said that Maya did not have to answer right away. She said that she understood if Maya needed time to think, to process, to decide. Maya looked at the woman sitting across from her. She saw the silver hair, the elegant suit, the expensive jewelry. But she also saw the tears, the trembling hands, the desperate hope in those gray eyes. She saw a woman who had made a terrible choice and had spent her whole life paying for it. She saw a woman who was facing death and wanted nothing more than to reconnect with the daughter she had lost. Maya did not say yes, but she did not say no either. She said that she needed time, and Eleanor nodded, understanding. She gave Maya a business card with her personal phone number written on the back. She said that Maya could call her any time, day or night, whenever she was ready to talk. And then she let Maya go, watching her walk out of the office with the same sad, hopeful expression. Maya finished her shift in a daze. She moved through the rest of the building on autopilot, her mind replaying the conversation over and over again. By the time she reached the bakery for her second job, she was so distracted that she burned an entire batch of bread and had to throw it away. Her boss yelled at her, but Maya barely heard him. She was too lost in her own thoughts. That night, after her shift at the diner, Maya sat in her tiny apartment and stared at Eleanor's business card. The paper was thick and expensive, the kind of paper that cost more than Maya made in an hour. She traced her finger over the phone number, wondering if she should call, wondering if she even wanted to. She thought about her childhood, about all the foster homes and all the families who had not wanted her. She thought about the nights she had spent hungry because there was not enough food to go around. She thought about the times she had been bullied for wearing secondhand clothes that did not fit right. She thought about all the dreams she had given up because she could not afford to pursue them. And then she thought about Eleanor, about the woman who had given her up but never stopped looking for her, about the woman who was dying and wanted to spend her final days making amends, about the woman who had built an empire worth trillions but still cried at the sight of her long-lost daughter. Maya did not call that night, or the next night, or the night after that. She carried Eleanor's business card with her everywhere she went, taking it out sometimes to look at it, wondering what it would mean to have a mother, even a dying one. She was afraid to hope, afraid to believe, afraid to let herself want something she had trained herself to live without. It was 3 weeks later when everything changed again. Maya was walking home from her diner shift, taking her usual route through the quiet streets of her neighborhood. It was late, almost 1 in the morning, and the streets were mostly empty. She was tired, her feet aching and her back sore, and she was looking forward to collapsing into her bed and sleeping for a few precious hours before starting the whole routine over again. She did not see the car until it was almost too late. It came out of nowhere, a black sedan with tinted windows, speeding down the street without its headlights on. Maya heard the engine and turned just in time to see it barreling toward her. She tried to jump out of the way, but her tired body was too slow. The car clipped her side, sending her spinning into the pavement. For a moment, everything was pain. She could not breathe, could not move, could not think. The world was a blur of darkness and agony. She heard voices, distant and muffled, and then she felt hands lifting her, carrying her somewhere. She tried to speak, tried to ask what was happening, but no words came out. When she woke up, she was in a hospital bed. The room was private and luxurious, nothing like the crowded emergency rooms she had seen before. There were flowers on every surface, expensive flowers that smelled like a garden. And, sitting beside her bed, holding her hand, was Eleanor Zhao. Eleanor's face was pale with worry, her eyes red from crying. She told Maya that she had been unconscious for 2 days. She told her that when she heard about the accident, she had Maya transferred to the best hospital in the city and brought in the best doctors money could buy. She told her that Maya had a concussion, several broken ribs, and a fractured leg, but that she was going to be okay. She was going to survive. Maya wanted to ask how Eleanor had found out about the accident. She wanted to ask why Eleanor was here, why she had paid for all of this, why she cared so much about a daughter she had abandoned 26 years ago. But she was too weak to form the words, and Eleanor seemed to understand. She just held Maya's hand and told her to rest, told her that everything was going to be okay, told her that she was not alone anymore. Over the next few weeks, as Maya recovered in the hospital, Eleanor visited every day. She brought food from expensive restaurants, books that Maya had mentioned wanting to read, and stories about her own life that Maya found herself wanting to hear. Despite her anger, despite her hurt, despite her years of abandonment, Maya found herself looking forward to Eleanor's visits. She found herself laughing at Eleanor's jokes, asking questions about Eleanor's business, and sharing stories of her own childhood that she had never told anyone. It was during one of these visits that Eleanor told Maya about her inheritance. She said that she had no other family, no other heirs, no one else to leave her fortune to. She said that when she died, everything she owned, every company, every property, every investment would go to Maya. She said that the lawyers had estimated her estate at over $10 billion, and that it would all belong to her daughter. Maya did not know how to respond. $10 billion was an impossible number, a fantasy, something that happened to other people in stories and movies, not to her. She told Eleanor that she did not want her money, that she had never wanted anything from her, that she just wanted answers and maybe, eventually, forgiveness. But Eleanor shook her head and said that the money was not about what Maya wanted. It was about what Eleanor needed to give. It was her way of making up for all the years she had missed, all the birthdays she had not celebrated, all the moments she had not been there for. Maya did not argue. She was too tired, too confused, too overwhelmed by everything that had happened. She just nodded and let Eleanor hold her hand, and, for the first time in her life, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, things were going to change. What Maya did not know, as she lay in that hospital bed recovering from her injuries, was that her life was about to become far more complicated than she could ever imagine. She did not know that the car that had hit her was not an accident. She did not know that there were people who did not want her to inherit Eleanor's fortune, people who would do anything to stop her. And she did not know that somewhere across the city, a man named Daniel was about to make a decision that would entangle their lives in ways neither of them could predict. Daniel Park was 30 years old, handsome, ambitious, and completely desperate. He sat in his small apartment, staring at the eviction notice that had been slipped under his door that morning. He had 30 days to come up with 3 months of back rent, or he and his pregnant wife Sarah would be out on the street. He had no savings, no job prospects, and no idea what he was going to do. 6 months ago, he had been on top of the world. He had been working as a financial analyst at a prestigious firm, earning a good salary, living in a nice apartment, planning a future with the woman he loved. And then, everything had fallen apart. He had made a mistake, a stupid mistake, trusting the wrong people and getting caught up in something that was not quite legal. He had been fired, blacklisted from the industry, and unable to find work anywhere. Sarah had stood by him through it all. She had told him that they would figure it out together, that they would get through this, that their love was stronger than any obstacle. But Daniel could see the worry in her eyes, the fear she tried to hide. She was 7 months pregnant, and she deserved so much better than this. She deserved a husband who could provide for her, who could give their child a good life, who was not a failure in every way that mattered. Daniel crumpled the eviction notice in his fist and threw it across the room. He had tried everything. He had applied for hundreds of jobs, taken whatever freelance work he could find, even asked his estranged family for help. Nothing had worked. He was out of options, out of time, and out of hope. It was in that moment of desperation that his phone rang. The number was unknown, but Daniel answered anyway. He had nothing to lose. The voice on the other end was smooth and professional. It belonged to a man who introduced himself as James, and he said that he had an opportunity for Daniel. A way to solve all his problems, to pay off his debts, to give his wife and child the life they deserved. All Daniel had to do was one simple thing. Daniel asked what it was. James told him, and Daniel's blood ran cold. James wanted Daniel to get close to a woman named Maya Chun. He wanted Daniel to make her fall in love with him, to gain her trust, to marry her if necessary. And then, when the time was right, he wanted Daniel to help James get control of her inheritance. $10 billion split between them, enough to set both of them up for life. Daniel wanted to hang up. He wanted to tell James that he was not that kind of person, that he would never betray an innocent woman for money, that he still had some morals left. But then he thought about Sarah, about the baby, about the eviction notice crumpled on the floor. He thought about what it would mean to fail them, to watch them suffer because he was too proud to do what needed to be done. He asked James for more details. James told him everything. Maya Chun, the long-lost daughter of Eleanor Zhao, about to inherit one of the largest fortunes in the world. She was naive, trusting, and had no idea of the danger she was in. All Daniel had to do was be her friend, her confidant, her lover. The rest would take care of itself. Daniel did not say yes, but he did not say no either. He told James that he needed time to think, and James said that was fine. He gave Daniel a week to decide. And then he hung up, leaving Daniel alone with the weight of an impossible choice. That night, Daniel lay in bed next to his sleeping wife and stared at the ceiling. He thought about Maya, a woman he had never met, whose life he was being asked to destroy. He thought about the money, enough to solve all his problems, and then some. He thought about his unborn child, who deserved a father who could provide for them. And in the darkness of that room, with his wife's hand resting on her swollen belly, Daniel made a decision that would change everything. He picked up his phone and sent James a single word. Yes. Maya left the hospital on a crisp November morning, her legs still in a cast and her ribs wrapped tight with bandages. Eleanor had insisted on sending a private car to pick her up, a sleek black vehicle with leather seats and a driver in a neat uniform. Maya had tried to refuse, had said that she could take the bus like she always did, but Eleanor would not hear of it. She said that Maya needed to rest, to heal, to let someone take care of her for once in her life. The car did not take her back to her small apartment. Instead, it drove through the city to a neighborhood Maya had never been to, a place of tree-lined streets and grand houses with manicured lawns. The car stopped in front of a building that looked like something from a magazine, all glass and stone and modern architecture. Eleanor was waiting at the entrance, a warm smile on her face despite the dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and advancing illness. Eleanor explained that she had arranged for Maya to stay in one of her properties while she recovered. She said it was a small apartment, Nothing too extravagant, just a place where Maya could rest without having to worry about climbing stairs or navigating a cramped space with her injuries. Maya wanted to argue, wanted to insist on going back to her own home. But when she saw the apartment, her protests died in her throat. The apartment was nothing like what she was used to. The living room alone was bigger than her entire place, with floor-to-ceiling windows that let in streams of natural light. The kitchen was equipped with appliances she did not know how to use, and the bedroom had a bed so soft and large that Maya felt like she might drown in it. There was a bathroom with a soaking tub, a closet filled with new clothes in her size, and a refrigerator stocked with more food than she could eat in a month. Maya sat down on the couch and looked around, feeling completely out of place. This was not her world. She did not belong in apartments like this, wearing clothes like the ones hanging in that closet, eating food that cost more than she made in a week. She was a cleaner, a baker, a waitress. She was nobody special, nobody important, nobody who deserved any of this. Eleanor sat down beside her and took her hand. She seemed to sense what Maya was thinking, because she spoke softly, carefully, choosing her words with obvious intention. She told Maya that she understood this was overwhelming. She told her that she did not expect Maya to change overnight, to suddenly become comfortable with wealth and luxury. All she wanted was for Maya to give herself permission to heal, to rest, to accept help without feeling guilty about it. Maya looked at the woman who claimed to be her mother and saw the genuine care in her eyes. She did not fully trust Eleanor, not yet. There were still too many questions, too many years of abandonment that could not be erased with expensive apartments and stocked refrigerators. But she was tired, so deeply tired, and the thought of going back to her old life of working 3 jobs and barely surviving seemed impossible right now. So she nodded and agreed to stay, at least until her injuries healed. The first few days were strange and disorienting. Maya did not know what to do with herself when she did not have to work. She had never had free time, never had the luxury of sitting still and doing nothing. She tried reading the books Eleanor had left for her, but she could not concentrate. She tried watching television, but the shows seemed silly and pointless. She tried sleeping, but her mind would not quiet down. On the 4th day, Eleanor came to visit with a proposition. She said that she wanted to introduce Maya to her world, to show her how Zhao Industries operated, to teach her about the empire she would one day inherit. Maya resisted at first, saying that she was not ready, that she did not know anything about business or technology or running a company. But Eleanor was patient and persistent, and eventually Maya agreed to at least visit the headquarters. The Zhao Industries building was a tower of glass and steel in the heart of the financial district. Maya had cleaned offices in buildings like this, but she had never entered one as a guest, as someone who mattered. Eleanor led her through the lobby, past security guards who nodded respectfully, into an elevator that shot up to the executive floor. Everyone they passed seemed to know Eleanor. They greeted her with deference, with respect, with something that looked almost like fear. Maya watched how people moved out of Eleanor's way, how they straightened their postures and lowered their eyes. This was power, real power, the kind of power that shaped the world. And Eleanor was offering to share it with her. They spent the morning touring the different departments. Maya met engineers who were developing technologies she could barely understand, marketing executives who planned campaigns worth millions of dollars, and lawyers who handled contracts that ran hundreds of pages. Everyone was polite to her, curious about the woman Eleanor introduced as her daughter, but Maya could sense the whispers that followed them through the hallways. She could feel the speculation, the doubt, the questions that people were too polite to ask out loud. After lunch in Eleanor's private dining room, they returned to her office. Eleanor closed the door and sat down behind her desk, looking suddenly older and more fragile than she had seemed all morning. She told Maya that there was something else she needed to know, something important about the inheritance. Eleanor explained that not everyone in the company was happy about Maya's sudden appearance. There were board members who had been expecting to take control when Eleanor died, executives who had spent years positioning themselves to inherit pieces of the empire. These people would not accept Maya easily. They would challenge her right to the inheritance, question her competence, try to find ways to take what was rightfully hers. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. She had not thought about this. She had been so focused on her own feelings about Eleanor, about the abandonment and the sudden reunion, that she had not considered what inheriting $10 billion might actually mean. She had not thought about the enemies she might make, the battles she might have to fight, the danger she might be in. Eleanor reached across the desk and took Maya's hand. She said that she would protect Maya as much as she could, for as long as she could. But her time was running out. The doctors had given her 6 months, maybe less. She needed Maya to be prepared, to be strong, to be ready to defend herself when Eleanor was no longer there to do it for her. Maya did not know what to say. She had gone from being a nobody to being a target in the span of a few weeks. She had gone from having nothing to potentially having everything, and with that everything came a weight she was not sure she could carry. But she looked at Eleanor, at this dying woman who had spent decades building something incredible and wanted nothing more than to leave it to her daughter, and she felt something shift inside her chest. She told Eleanor that she would try. She could not promise to be ready, could not promise to be strong enough, but she would try. And for now, that was enough. Eleanor smiled, the first real smile Maya had seen from her, and for a moment the office felt less like a battleground and more like a home. The weeks that followed were a blur of learning and adapting. Eleanor arranged for tutors to teach Maya about business, finance, and corporate law. She introduced her to key employees who could be trusted, allies who would support her when the time came. She took Maya to meetings, letting her observe how decisions were made, how power was wielded, how an empire was run. Maya absorbed everything like a sponge. She had always been smart, always been a quick learner, but she had never had the opportunity to prove it. In school, she had been too busy surviving to focus on academics. In her jobs, she had been too tired to think about anything beyond the task in front of her. But now, with time and resources and motivation, she discovered a capacity for understanding that surprised even herself. She learned how to read financial statements, how to evaluate business proposals, how to spot the warning signs of a bad deal. She learned the names and faces of everyone who mattered at Zhao Industries, memorizing their positions, their loyalties, their potential weaknesses. She learned how to carry herself in meetings, how to speak with authority, how to command attention without raising her voice. Eleanor watched her progress with pride and something that looked like regret. One evening, as they were having dinner in Eleanor's penthouse, she told Maya that she wished she could have been there to watch her grow up. She said that she could see so much potential in her, so much strength that had been forged by hardship. She said that Maya was going to be an incredible leader, better than Eleanor herself had ever been. Maya did not know how to respond to such praise. She had spent her whole life being told she was worthless, that she would never amount to anything, that she was lucky to even be alive. To hear someone, especially someone like Eleanor, tell her that she was destined for greatness felt like a dream she might wake up from at any moment. It was during this time that Maya first encountered Daniel Park. She did not know who he was, did not know the role he had been hired to play in her life, did not know that every word he spoke to her was calculated to win her trust. She only knew that he was kind, charming, and seemed to understand her in a way that no one else did. Their first meeting happened at a charity event that Eleanor had insisted Maya attend. It was a formal affair with elegant dresses and expensive suits and conversations about art and politics that Maya did not quite follow. She felt out of place, uncomfortable in the designer gown Eleanor had bought for her, struggling to remember the etiquette lessons she had been given. She found a quiet corner near the bar and stood there, nursing a glass of water and wishing she could disappear. That was when Daniel approached her. He was tall and handsome, with dark hair and warm brown eyes that seemed to sparkle with amusement. He introduced himself as a financial consultant, recently arrived in the city and looking to make connections. He said that he had noticed her standing alone and thought she might appreciate some company. Maya was suspicious at first. She had learned to be wary of strangers who approached her, especially men who seemed too interested too quickly. But There was something about Daniel that put her at ease. He did not talk down to her, did not treat her like she was beneath him, did not ask intrusive questions about her relationship with Eleanor. He just stood beside her and made casual conversation about the terrible music and the overpriced hors d'oeuvres. By the end of the night, Maya found herself laughing for the first time in weeks. Daniel had a way of finding humor in everything, of making even the most mundane observations seem clever and witty. When the event ended and they had to part ways, he asked if he could see her again. Maya hesitated, thinking of everything she had to learn, everything she had to prepare for, everything that was waiting to crash down on her. But then, she looked at his hopeful smile and felt something warm bloom in her chest. She said yes. Over the following weeks, Maya and Daniel saw each other often. He would meet her for coffee after her tutoring sessions, take her on walks through the park during her rare free moments, sit with her in quiet restaurants where they could talk without being overheard. He listened to her stories about growing up in foster care, about the loneliness and the hunger and the fear that had defined her childhood. He shared his own struggles, talking about financial troubles that had left him desperate, about a wife who was pregnant and expecting him to provide. Maya was shocked when he mentioned his wife. She had assumed he was single, had started to develop feelings for him that she now felt ashamed of. But Daniel quickly explained that his marriage was falling apart, that he and Sarah had grown distant over the years, that they stayed together only for the sake of the baby. He said that meeting Maya had made him realize what he had been missing, what it felt like to truly connect with someone. It was a lie, of course. Every word was carefully crafted to draw Maya closer, to make her feel special, to make her trust him. Daniel did love his wife. He loved Sarah more than anything in the world, more than his own life. But he had made a deal with James, had committed to a plan that required him to betray an innocent woman, and he was in too deep to back out now. At night, when he went home to Sarah, Daniel felt sick with guilt. His wife was growing larger every day, her belly round with the child they had created together. She would smile at him when he came through the door, ask about his day, talk excitedly about nursery decorations and baby names. She had no idea what he was doing, no idea that he was spending his days seducing another woman, no idea that their future was built on a foundation of lies. Daniel told himself that he was doing this for her, for them, for their child. He told himself that Maya would be fine, that she would still have plenty of money even after James took his share, that she would recover and move on with her life. He told himself that he had no choice, that circumstances had forced him into this position, that he was not really a bad person. But every time he looked at Maya, every time he saw the way her face lit up when she saw him, every time he felt her hand slip into his, he knew that he was lying to himself. He was destroying something precious, something innocent, and no amount of justification could make it right. As the weeks turned into months, Maya's feelings for Daniel deepened. She had never been in love before, had never had someone look at her the way he did, had never felt the warmth of being cherished and desired. She found herself thinking about him constantly, counting down the hours until their next meeting, dreaming about a future where they could be together. She told Eleanor about him, and Eleanor's reaction was cautious. She said that Maya should be careful, that there were people who would try to use her for her money, that she needed to protect her heart as well as her inheritance. Maya assured her that Daniel was different, that he cared about her as a person, that he had never once asked about her wealth or her connection to Zhao Industries. Eleanor did not push the issue, but Maya could see the worry in her eyes. She dismissed it as maternal overprotection, the concern of a woman who had missed out on raising her daughter and was trying to make up for it now. She did not consider that Eleanor might be seeing something she was too blinded by love to notice. Eleanor's health continued to decline throughout the winter. The cancer was spreading faster than the doctors had predicted, stealing her strength and her vitality day by day. She spent more and more time in bed, too weak to go to the office, too exhausted to do anything but rest. Maya visited her every day, sitting by her bedside and reading to her, talking about the lessons she had learned, updating her on the company's progress. During one of these visits, Eleanor told Maya something that would haunt her for years to come. She said that she had a confession to make, something she had been too ashamed to tell her before. She said that she had not abandoned Maya just because of poverty. There was another reason, a darker reason, one that she had never told anyone. Maya listened as Eleanor's voice grew weak and trembling. She explained that when she had been pregnant with Maya, she had been involved with dangerous people. Business partners who had turned out to be criminals, men who dealt in weapons and drugs and human trafficking. When she tried to leave, they threatened to kill her and her baby. She had left Maya at that fire station not just because she could not afford to raise her, but because she was trying to protect her, to hide her from people who would have hurt her. Maya's mind reeled with this new information. Her whole life, she had believed that she was abandoned because she was unwanted. Now she was learning that she was abandoned because she was in danger. It did not make the years of loneliness any easier to bear, but it shifted something in her perception of Eleanor. Her mother had not been indifferent to her fate. She had been terrified for her. Eleanor said that the men she had been involved with were long gone now, dealt with years ago as she built her empire and gained the power to protect herself. But she had always worried that someone might discover Maya's existence, might try to use her to get to Eleanor. That was part of why she had searched so desperately for her daughter. She wanted to bring her into the light, to protect her openly, to make sure that anyone who wanted to hurt Maya would have to go through the full force of Zhao Industries first. Maya held Eleanor's frail hand and felt tears streaming down her face. For so long, she had thought she was alone in the world, that no one had ever cared about her survival. Now she knew that someone had been watching over her from afar, had been searching for her, had been preparing to welcome her home. The years of suffering had not been meaningless. They had been part of a larger story, one that was only now beginning to make sense. Eleanor's final months were both beautiful and devastating. Maya spent every possible moment with her, learning not just about business but about life. Eleanor told her stories about growing up in China, about immigrating to a new country with nothing, about the dreams she had chased and the sacrifices she had made. She talked about love, about loss, about the regrets that kept her awake at night. She told Maya that her greatest regret was not being there to watch her grow up, not being able to hold her when she cried, not being able to protect her from the cruelty of the world. In those final months, a bond formed between mother and daughter that transcended the years of separation. Maya came to understand Eleanor not just as the woman who had abandoned her, but as a complex human being who had made impossible choices under impossible circumstances. She did not fully forgive her, not yet, but she began to understand. And understanding was the first step toward something like peace. Daniel continued to be a presence in Maya's life throughout this time. He was supportive and caring, always there when she needed a shoulder to cry on, always ready with words of comfort when the weight of watching Eleanor die became too much to bear. Maya found herself relying on him more and more, opening up to him in ways she had never opened up to anyone. What she did not know was that Daniel was passing information to James every step of the way. He reported on Eleanor's declining health, on Maya's emotional state, on the progress of the inheritance preparations. James was patient, biding his time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He knew that Maya would be vulnerable after Eleanor's death, and he wanted Daniel to be positioned as her primary source of comfort and support. Sarah gave birth in late February, a beautiful baby girl they named Lily. Daniel held his daughter for the first time and felt his heart crack in two. Here was this perfect, innocent creature who depended on him completely. Here was the reason he had made his terrible bargain, the life he was trying to protect. But as he looked into Lily's eyes, he wondered if he could really go through with it, if he could really destroy another woman's life to secure his daughter's future. He went home that night and lay beside Sarah, listening to her breathe in the darkness. The baby was sleeping in a bassinet next to the bed, making soft sounds that filled Daniel with a love he had never known before. He thought about Maya, about how she trusted him completely, about how she had no idea that he was planning to betray her. He thought about the money, about what it would mean for his family, about whether any amount of wealth was worth the cost of his soul. The answer, he realized, was no. Nothing was worth this. Nothing was worth destroying an innocent woman who had already suffered so much. Nothing was worth becoming the kind of man who could look into someone's eyes and lie without hesitation. He had to find another way, another solution, another path forward that did not require him to be a monster. But it was too late. He had already set events in motion that could not be stopped. James had made it clear that backing out was not an option, that there would be consequences for failure, that Daniel's family would suffer if he did not see the plan through to the end. Daniel was trapped, caught in a web of his own making, with no way out that did not lead to ruin. Eleanor died on a Tuesday morning in early March. Maya was by her side, holding her hand, whispering words of love and gratitude as the machines beeped and then fell silent. The woman who had given her life, who had abandoned her and then found her again, who had tried so hard to make up for years of absence in just a few short months, was gone. Maya did not cry, not at first. She sat there in the hospital room, still holding Eleanor's cooling hand, trying to process the enormity of what had just happened. She had just lost her mother, the mother she had only known for a year, the mother she had just begun to understand. And now she was alone again, truly alone, with nothing but a fortune she had never asked for and a future she could not imagine. When she finally left the hospital, stepping out into the bright March sunshine, she found Daniel waiting for her. He opened his arms, and she walked into them without hesitation, burying her face in his chest and, finally, letting the tears come. He held her tight and murmured words of comfort, and, in that moment, he seemed like the only solid thing in a world that had collapsed around her. What Maya did not see, could not see through her tears, was the expression on Daniel's face. It was not just concern or sympathy. It was guilt, raw and terrible, the guilt of a man who knew exactly what he was about to do and hated himself for it. He held the woman he was about to betray and wished, more than anything, that he could take it all back. But it was too late for wishes. The plan was already in motion, and Maya, grieving and vulnerable and completely trusting, had no idea that the man she loved was about to destroy her. The reading of Eleanor Zhao's will took place 2 weeks after her funeral in the mahogany-paneled conference room of the law firm that had represented Zhao Industries for over 2 decades. Maya sat at the long table, dressed in black, still wearing the stunned expression of someone who had not yet fully processed their loss. Beside her sat Daniel, his hand covering hers on the table in what appeared to be a gesture of support. Across from them sat a group of Zhao Industries board members, their faces carefully neutral but their eyes sharp with anticipation. The lawyer, a silver-haired man named Arthur Chun, cleared his throat and began to read. The will was extensive, running dozens of pages, filled with specific bequests to employees, charities, and distant relatives Maya had never heard of. But everyone in the room knew what they were waiting for, what really mattered, what would determine the future of one of the largest corporate empires in the world. When Arthur finally reached the relevant section, his voice remained steady and professional, as if he were reading a grocery list instead of a document worth billions. He announced that Eleanor Zhao had named her daughter, Maya Chun, as the sole beneficiary of her personal estate and the controlling shareholder of Zhao Industries. Maya would inherit all properties, all investments, all assets totaling approximately $10 billion. More importantly, she would receive 60% of the company's voting shares, giving her complete control over its direction and leadership. The room erupted in murmurs and exchanged glances. Maya sat frozen, the reality of what she had just heard washing over her like a cold wave. She had known this was coming. Eleanor had told her many times that everything would be hers. But hearing it spoken aloud, in this formal setting, surrounded by people who clearly wished it were otherwise, made it suddenly, terrifyingly real. One of the board members, a man named Victor Walsh who had been with the company for nearly 30 years, raised his hand to ask a question. His voice was polite but carried an unmistakable edge. He wanted to know what provisions had been made for the company's leadership during the transition period. He wanted to know who would run Zhao Industries until Maya was ready to assume control. He wanted to know, though he did not say it directly, how they could prevent this inexperienced outsider from destroying everything Eleanor had built. Arthur answered calmly. Eleanor had anticipated such concerns and had prepared accordingly. She had appointed a transitional committee to manage the company for up to 1 year, giving Maya time to learn the business and prove herself capable. However, Maya would have the final say on all major decisions during this period, and she could assume full control whenever she felt ready. The committee would advise but not dictate. Victor's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. This was not the answer he had hoped for. He had expected Eleanor to be more practical, to recognize that her estranged daughter was not qualified to run a global technology empire. He had expected safeguards, limitations, something that would allow the board to maintain real power. Instead, Eleanor had handed everything to Maya on a silver platter. After the reading concluded, Maya was escorted to a private office where Arthur explained the next steps. There would be paperwork to sign, accounts to transfer, legal processes to complete. It would take weeks, possibly months, before everything was finalized. In the meantime, Maya would have access to substantial funds for living expenses and would be expected to begin meeting with company executives to understand her new responsibilities. Maya listened numbly, nodding at appropriate intervals, trying to absorb information that seemed beyond her comprehension. Just over a year ago, she had been cleaning offices at 4 in the morning, worried about whether she could afford new shoes. Now she owned a penthouse, multiple properties around the world, and the controlling stake in a trillion-dollar company. The contrast was so extreme that it felt like a cruel joke. Daniel drove her home afterward, his presence a comforting anchor in the chaos. He did not pepper her with questions or offer empty platitudes. He simply stayed beside her, solid and dependable, letting her process in her own time. When they reached the penthouse, the one Eleanor had given her, he made tea and sat with her on the couch, waiting for her to speak. Maya finally broke the silence by asking what she was supposed to do now. Her voice was small and lost, stripped of all the confidence she had been trying to build over the past months. Daniel took her hands in his and told her that she did not have to figure everything out tonight. He told her that she had people who would help her, lawyers and accountants and advisors who knew what they were doing. He told her that she just needed to take things one day at a time. It was good advice, sensible and caring, exactly what Maya needed to hear. She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder, feeling the warmth of his body against hers. She told him that she did not know what she would do without him, that he was the only thing keeping her sane. He kissed the top of her head and told her that he was not going anywhere. The lie burned in his throat, but he swallowed it down. Over the following weeks, Maya threw herself into learning her new role. She met with executives from every division of Zhao Industries, attended board meetings, reviewed financial reports, and consulted with advisors on everything from market strategy to corporate governance. It was overwhelming and exhausting, but it also gave her something to focus on besides her grief. As long as she was working, as long as she was learning, she did not have to think about the emptiness that threatened to swallow her whole. Daniel remained a constant presence throughout this time. He would meet her for dinner after her long days, listen to her vent about frustrating colleagues, offer advice when she asked for it. He never overstepped, never tried to insert himself into her business decisions, never gave any indication that he had ulterior motives. He was simply there, supportive and loving, everything Maya had ever wanted in a partner. Their relationship deepened as the weeks passed. What had started as casual meetings and friendly conversations evolved into something more intimate. Daniel began staying overnight at the penthouse, his toothbrush appearing in her bathroom, his clothes accumulating in her closet. Maya did not question it. She was lonely and grieving and desperately in need of human connection, and Daniel provided all of that and more. She knew he had a wife and a baby at home. He had been honest about that from the beginning, and she had tried to respect those boundaries at first. But as time went on, as her feelings grew stronger, she found herself unable to resist. When Daniel told her that his marriage was over in all but name, that he and Sarah were only staying together for Lily's sake, Maya believed him because she wanted to believe him. When he said that Sarah knew about his feelings for someone else and had accepted it, Maya did not ask for proof. Love had made her blind to the warning signs that should have been obvious. What Maya did not know was that Sarah had no idea about her existence. Daniel went home every night after leaving Maya's penthouse, kissed his wife, played with his daughter, and pretended that everything was normal. He had become an expert at compartmentalization, keeping his two lives completely separate, never letting one bleed into the other. Sarah thought he was working late, networking with potential clients, building a career that would secure their family's future. She had no reason to suspect that her husband was spending his evenings in another woman's bed. James remained in the shadows, directing the operation from a distance. He had instructed Daniel to be patient, to take his time, to establish himself firmly in Maya's life before making any moves. The inheritance was substantial, but it was also complicated. Maya would need to formally assume control of Zhao Industries, transfer assets into her name, and establish herself as the legitimate heir. Only then would it be safe to act. In the meantime, James had other problems to manage. Victor Walsh had reached out to him shortly after the will reading, furious about the outcome and desperate to find a way to contest it. James had listened to his grievances, sympathized with his frustration, and then proposed a partnership. If Victor could help delay or complicate Maya's assumption of control, James would ensure that he was rewarded handsomely once they had access to her fortune. Victor agreed without much convincing. He had worked at Zhao Industries for nearly 3 decades, had expected to be named CEO when Eleanor retired, and could not stomach the idea of reporting to a former cleaning lady with no business experience. He believed that he was protecting Eleanor's legacy by undermining her daughter. He told himself that Maya would eventually fail anyway, that it was better to accelerate the inevitable, that the company and its employees would be better off with experienced leadership. The attacks on Maya began subtly. Important documents would go missing, making her look disorganized at meetings. Subordinates would misunderstand her instructions, causing minor crises that required her attention. Information she needed for decisions would arrive late or incomplete, forcing her to make choices based on inadequate data. None of these incidents were obviously malicious, but the cumulative effect was to make Maya seem incompetent. Maya noticed that something was wrong, but she could not identify the source. She worked harder, stayed later, tried to compensate for the constant stream of small disasters. She asked Daniel if she was imagining things, if the difficulties she faced were normal for someone new to such a role. He assured her that she was doing fine, that all new leaders face challenges, that she just needed to give it time. What he did not tell her was that he knew exactly who was behind her troubles. James had informed him of the arrangement with Victor, had explained that it was part of the larger plan to weaken Maya's position before the final strike. Daniel had nodded and said nothing, had gone home and held his daughter, had wondered how many more lies he could tell before they suffocated him. The situation came to a head at a board meeting in late May. Victor had prepared a presentation challenging Maya's proposed restructuring of the Asian operations, a plan she had worked on for weeks with the help of Eleanor's most trusted advisors. His objections were technical and detailed, filled with industry jargon and financial metrics that Maya was still learning to interpret. He made her look foolish, unprepared, completely out of her depth. Maya sat at the head of the table, watching her authority crumble, feeling the eyes of the other board members on her. Some looked sympathetic, others skeptical. A few barely concealed their satisfaction. She wanted to defend herself, to explain the reasoning behind her proposal, to demonstrate that she understood more than they gave her credit for. But the words stuck in her throat, and by the time she found her voice, the moment had passed. After the meeting, she locked herself in Eleanor's office, which was now technically hers, and cried. She cried for her mother, who had believed in her so completely. She cried for herself, for the impossible situation she had inherited. She cried for the dreams she had allowed herself to entertain, dreams of being worthy of Eleanor's trust, of building something meaningful with her inherited fortune, of finally belonging somewhere. Daniel found her there an hour later, her eyes red and swollen, her carefully applied makeup streaked down her cheeks. He did not say anything at first, just sat beside her and put his arm around her shoulders. Then, he told her that she was stronger than she knew, that she could not let one bad meeting define her, that Eleanor had chosen her for a reason. His words were kind and encouraging, exactly what she needed to hear, and Maya felt herself drawing strength from his presence. That night, as they lay together in her bed, Maya made a decision. She told Daniel that she wanted him to move in with her permanently. She told him that she was tired of being alone, tired of facing her challenges without someone by her side, tired of pretending that their relationship was anything less than what it was. She wanted to build a life with him, a real life, one that did not depend on stolen hours and secret meetings. Daniel's heart lurched in his chest. This was not supposed to happen. The plan was for him to stay close to Maya, to gain her trust, to position himself for the eventual betrayal. He was not supposed to actually fall for her, was not supposed to care about her happiness, was not supposed to feel this terrible weight of guilt every time she looked at him with love in her eyes. But he heard himself saying yes anyway. He heard himself agreeing to leave his wife, to abandon the mother of his child, to commit fully to the deception that had already consumed his life. Because the truth was that he did have feelings for Maya, complicated and confusing feelings that he did not know how to process. And because James would never let him back out now, not when they were so close to achieving their goal. He went home that night and told Sarah that their marriage was over. She stared at him in disbelief, holding Lily in her arms, unable to comprehend what she was hearing. She asked him why, what she had done wrong, how this could be happening. He told her that he had fallen in love with someone else, that he could not continue living a lie, that it was better for everyone if he left. Sarah's face crumpled. She had suspected nothing, had believed that they were building a life together, had thought that the financial troubles they faced would pass as long as they faced them as a team. Now the man she loved was walking out the door, leaving her alone with a newborn baby and no way to support herself. She begged him to stay, to try to work things out, to remember the vows they had made. But Daniel was already gone, emotionally if not physically, and nothing she said could reach him. He moved into Maya's penthouse the following week. Sarah was left in their tiny apartment, struggling to care for Lily while dealing with the devastation of her husband's betrayal. She had no family nearby, few friends she could lean on, and a bank account that was rapidly approaching zero. She was alone, abandoned, exactly like Maya had been for most of her life. The irony was not lost on Daniel. He had set out to destroy one woman's happiness and had ended up destroying another's instead. Or rather, he had destroyed both, because what he was planning for Maya would shatter her just as completely as he had shattered Sarah. He was leaving a trail of broken hearts and ruined lives, and for what? Money, security, the desperate hope that somehow, if he got through this, he could make it all right. Maya, meanwhile, was happier than she had been in months. Having Daniel living with her felt like coming home to something she had never had before. She would wake up next to him in the morning, cook breakfast with him in the beautiful kitchen she was still learning to use, and fall asleep in his arms at night. The challenges at work seemed more manageable when she had someone waiting for her at the end of the day. Someone who believed in her even when she struggled to believe in herself. She introduced Daniel to the executives at Zhao Industries, presenting him as her partner and closest confidant. Some of them raised eyebrows at the speed of the relationship, at the fact that he had left his wife and infant daughter to be with her, but Maya did not care about their opinions. She was tired of being alone, of having no one to trust, of facing the world without support. Daniel gave her all of those things, and she was not going to apologize for accepting them. Victor Walsh watched these developments with calculating interest. He reported back to James that Daniel had successfully embedded himself in Maya's life, that he appeared to have her complete trust, that the time for action was approaching. James agreed but counseled patience. They needed to wait until Maya had formally consolidated her control of Zhao Industries, until all the legal challenges to her inheritance had been resolved, until her fortune was truly and completely hers. Then, and only then, would they make their move. The months passed, and Maya grew into her role more successfully than anyone had expected. Despite the constant obstacles Victor threw in her path, she learned to navigate the corporate landscape with increasing skill. She made allies among the younger executives who appreciated her fresh perspective. She pushed through changes that improved efficiency and morale. She even managed to negotiate a major acquisition that added billions to the company's value. The board members who had initially doubted her began to come around. They saw that she was smart, hardworking, and genuinely committed to Zhao Industries' success. They saw that she was willing to listen to advice but also capable of making her own decisions. They saw, in short, the potential that Eleanor had recognized in her from the very beginning. Daniel watched Maya's transformation with a mixture of pride and despair. Pride, because he genuinely admired what she was accomplishing. Despair, because every success made her more valuable to James, brought them closer to the moment of betrayal, tightened the noose that was slowly strangling his conscience. He would lie awake at night, listening to Maya breathe beside him, wondering if there was any way out of the trap he had built for himself. He tried to contact Sarah once, about 3 months after he had left. He had heard through a mutual friend that she was struggling, that she had moved in with her sister because she could not afford the apartment anymore, that she was working 2 jobs while trying to care for Lily. He called her number, but she did not answer. He left a message saying that he was sorry, that he wanted to help, that he would send money. She never called back. The guilt ate at him, but he pushed it down. He told himself that once this was over, once he had his share of Maya's fortune, he would make it right. He would send Sarah enough money to live comfortably for the rest of her life. He would set up a trust fund for Lily that would ensure she never wanted for anything. He would find a way to atone for what he had done, to balance the scales of karma that were currently tipped heavily against him. But first, he had to finish what he had started. James was getting impatient, sending increasingly demanding messages, wanting to know when Daniel would be ready to move to the next phase. The plan required Maya to give Daniel access to her accounts, to make him a signatory on her investments, to trust him with the keys to her fortune. Only then could they execute the scheme that would transfer her billions into accounts that James controlled. Daniel began working on it, dropping subtle hints about their future together, about how they should combine their finances now that they were living as a couple, about how he wanted to take care of her the way she took care of everyone else. Maya was hesitant at first, a lifetime of self-reliance making her cautious about depending on anyone. But Daniel was patient and loving and so convincing in his sincerity that eventually, piece by piece, she began to let her guard down. She added his name to one account, then another. She made him a beneficiary on her life insurance policies. She gave him power of attorney for situations where she might be unable to act for herself. Each step was presented as a gesture of love and trust, and Maya accepted them as such. She had no reason to suspect that the man she loved was systematically laying the groundwork for her destruction. The final piece fell into place on a warm evening in early September, almost exactly a year after Maya had first learned of Eleanor's existence. They were sitting on the terrace of the penthouse, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a diamond ring, not as large as Maya could have afforded but beautiful nonetheless. He asked her to marry him. He told her that she was the best thing that had ever happened to him, that he wanted to spend the rest of his life making her happy, that he could not imagine his future without her in it. His words were sincere, more sincere than he had intended, because somewhere along the way the performance had become real. He did love her in his own complicated and terrible way. He loved her even as he prepared to betray her. Maya said yes through tears of joy. She threw her arms around him and kissed him, tasting salt on her lips, feeling her heart overflow with a happiness she had never dared to hope for. She had found love, real love, the kind of love she had read about in books but never believed could be hers. All those years of loneliness, of abandonment, of believing she was unworthy of being loved. And here she was, engaged to a man who looked at her like she was the center of his universe. They set a wedding date for the following spring. Maya threw herself into planning with the same energy she brought to running Zhao Industries. She booked venues, hired caterers, invited the few friends she had made since inheriting her fortune. She called Arthur Chun to ask about prenuptial agreements, because she wanted to protect Daniel from any accusations that he was only marrying her for her money. She wanted the world to know that their love was real. Daniel went along with all of it, smiling and nodding and playing the part of the devoted fiancé. Inside, he was dying. Every flower arrangement, every seating chart, every discussion about their future together was another knife in his chest. He was going to destroy this woman who trusted him completely, who had opened her heart to him after years of having it broken, who deserved so much better than what he was about to do. He told himself that it would be over soon. James had set the date for the final phase of their plan. 1 week after the wedding, they would execute a series of transfers that would move the bulk of Maya's liquid assets into untraceable accounts. By the time she realized what had happened, Daniel would be gone. Her money would be gone, and her belief in love would be shattered beyond repair. 1 week. That was all the time Daniel had left to be the man Maya thought he was. 1 week of pretending, of lying, of holding her in his arms and hating himself for what he was about to do. And then it would be over, for better or for worse. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. Because there was one thing Daniel had not counted on, one variable he had failed to consider in all his careful calculations. Sarah, the wife he had abandoned, the mother of his child, the woman who had nothing left to lose and everything to gain by exposing his lies. She had spent the past months piecing together the truth. She had followed him, watched him from a distance, learned everything she could about the woman he had left her for. She knew about Maya's inheritance, about Daniel's connection to James, about the elaborate con that was being run on an innocent victim. And she had decided that if Daniel was going to destroy her life, she was going to make sure he did not get away with it. Sarah was coming, and when she arrived, everything was going to change. The wedding was 3 days away when Sarah finally made her move. She had spent weeks gathering evidence, documenting every transaction, recording every conversation she could manage to overhear. She had tracked down James and learned about his history of financial fraud, his connections to organized crime, his pattern of targeting wealthy women through elaborate romance schemes. She had built a case so complete that no one could deny what Daniel had been planning. But confronting Maya directly was not part of her plan. Sarah knew that a woman in love would not believe a stranger who showed up claiming her fiancé was a con artist. Maya would dismiss her as a jealous ex-wife, desperate to destroy a relationship she could not have. The accusations would be denied, evidence would be explained away, and Daniel would tighten his grip even further. Sarah needed to be smarter than that. Instead, she reached out to Victor Walsh. She had learned about his opposition to Maya during her research, had identified him as someone who might be receptive to information that could discredit Daniel. What she did not know was that Victor was already working with James, that he was part of the very conspiracy she was trying to expose. Victor listened to Sarah's story with growing alarm. Not alarm on Maya's behalf, but alarm on his own. If Sarah went public with what she knew, the entire scheme would collapse. James would disappear with whatever money he had already managed to skim, Daniel would be arrested, and Victor's involvement would eventually come to light. He could not allow that to happen. He thanked Sarah for coming to him, told her that he would handle the situation, and assured her that Maya would be protected. Then he called James and told him everything. James was furious. He had not anticipated that Sarah would investigate, would put together the pieces, would become a threat to everything they had worked for. He needed to neutralize her before she could do any more damage. He told Victor to arrange a meeting with Sarah, somewhere private, somewhere they could have a conversation without being interrupted. Victor agreed, his hands trembling as he hung up the phone. Sarah received Victor's call the next morning. He said that he wanted to discuss how to present the evidence to Maya, that he had access to the company's legal team and could help ensure that the truth came out in a way that would protect everyone involved. Sarah was suspicious but also desperate. She had been fighting alone for too long, had exhausted her resources and her energy, and the thought of having an ally was too appealing to resist. They arranged to meet at a coffee shop near the Zhao Industries headquarters. Sarah arrived early, carrying a folder full of documents and a flash drive containing digital evidence. She had made copies of everything and stored them in multiple locations, because she was not naive enough to put all her trust in a man she had just met. But she was tired, so tired, and she wanted this to be over. Victor arrived with two men Sarah did not recognize. They were large and intimidating, with the kind of blank expressions that suggested they were professionals. Victor apologized, saying that they were security personnel from the company, that he had brought them as a precaution. Sarah's instincts screamed at her to leave, but before she could move, one of the men grabbed her arm and pulled her toward a car idling at the curb. She screamed, struggled, tried to break free, but they were too strong. They pushed her into the back seat and drove away, leaving her folder of documents scattered on the sidewalk. A few passersby stopped to stare, but no one intervened. In the city, people had learned not to get involved in situations that looked dangerous. Daniel received the call that afternoon. James told him that there had been a complication, that Sarah had been gathering evidence, that she was now somewhere she could not cause any more trouble. Daniel's blood ran cold. He asked what James meant by that, demanded to know where Sarah was, what they had done to her. James told him not to worry. Sarah was fine, just being held somewhere until after the plan was complete. Once they had Maya's money, once Daniel had fulfilled his end of the bargain, she would be released. It was all under control.